Wow, fantastic. All six of us are here today. Well, we're here for our final podcast for the semester. What should we talk about first?
Yeah, so part of you mentioned that you were supposed to curate this whole list of recommendations. So maybe you can start talking about some of the recommendations that we have.
Yeah, so I was looking at the shared file. It's a very long list by now. Now I'm a little bit worried about whether if we release this into the wild, the students may get a bit scared. But thankfully the module is over, so it's okay. Shall we go around? Right? Why don't we go around to talk about at least one recommendation each time? Who wants to start? Bernard, you want to start first?
Yeah, sure. So my first recommendation, if you followed our last webcast, you would see that we discussed Camus a little bit without going into too much detail. So my first recommendation is a novel, actually. So nothing too technical. It's a novel called The Outsider or The Stranger, depending on the translation you get, by Albert Camus. Yeah, so that's my first recommendation. And I also want to recommend a film called Predestination that has to do more with free will and moral responsibility. So if you're interested in those mind-bending time travel movies, and I think Predestination is a good one to check out. Yeah.
Very nice. How do you discover these particular items?
Well, for Camus, I just was randomly on Book Depot, and then I just clicked on this book that looked interesting, and then it turns out it kind of determined what I pursued in university. Yeah, so that's how I discovered the book. The movie, I didn't know anything about it. My friend and I were just going to the movies, not sure what to watch, and there was one of the only movies available at that time. So again, chance, yeah.
The moral of the story is be careful when you go online shopping. Okay, who wants to go next?
Exactly.
Who wants to go next? Gabriel, want to go next? Yeah.
Sure. Should I pick one book I wanted to recommend out of the list, or should I follow?
Up to you. It's up to you. Yeah.
Okay, because one book I really wanted to recommend was Taking Back Philosophy by Brian Van Norden. So first, because it's an occasion for me to recommend something about Chinese philosophy that is not too nerdy and that is pretty accessible. I think it's also very funny, so it can be cool for a lot of people, but I think that it's a must read actually for people who want to pursue academic philosophy, because it talks about an issue that students here at NUS might not have encountered yet, but they will if they pursue philosophy, which is the fact that Western philosophy department have an issue of diversity with their corpus, right? So their corpus is often essentially Western and excluding of other tradition of thoughts for no good reason. So the book gives really strong incentives to change that. And what I like about it is also that it gives you concrete examples about what happens when you put two philosophers of different tradition of thoughts into dialogue with each other, and really the value of it. So it's the kind of book who makes you want to read more. So I could not recommend it enough for a new student of philosophy.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm actually next in line in terms of at least that's how it looks on the screen. So I'll take the chance to say that if you want to read a book in Chinese philosophy, I would actually say that go read the Zhuangzi. The translations are fine. You can find the Burton-Watson translation. That's okay, I'll leave it in the recommendations. My advice there is don't take it too seriously, because I don't think whoever wrote it wants you to take it too seriously. What you want to do is to kind of enjoy the craziness of it, right? And then in those moments, you will notice that, wait a minute, this guy's got an argument here. What's going on here? So I will throw in my little bit of a recommendation of one book from the early Chinese text that I think is kind of worth reading because it's very influential and it's fun. It's not heavy going, right? It's kind of crazy, right? Since we're in that mood, I might as well recommend one of those. Now, I'll come back to me. We can talk more later. Gerald, your turn.
Yeah, okay, so just following the order, I just want to recommend a book, right? It's right here. It's called Bad Arguments right? And 100 of the most important fallacies in Western philosophy. So sorry, going back to Western tradition. But okay, like because in the module we've been, looking at very good arguments, right? In the sense that okay, they are valid and their premises are at least, controversial. But it's very useful to look at certain, fallacious arguments, right? Invalid arguments that still have some sort of like, intuitive pull to them, right? And why we should, try to stay away from these fallacious arguments, right? So the book is very, very in depth. It gives a lot of examples, and it also tells us why we tend to think that these fallacious arguments have that sort of persuasive pull to them,
Yeah.
right? Which I thought was really cool,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and yeah, just go look at it. My favorite fallacy so far is, well, the fallacy, which is that, okay, just because an argument is fallacious, that doesn't mean that the conclusion is false, okay? Yeah.
If we have done our job correctly this semester, we would have drummed that into the students, I hope. How many times were they tested, where, what happens if the argument is unsound? Not just fallacious, but unsound, right? And they're supposed to draw the conclusion that they don't know whether the conclusion is true or false yet. Yeah. Hui-chieh, you want to go next?
Okay. The book I want to recommend is called This Life, and the subtitle is Secular Faith and Spiritual Freedom. I think that's the subtitle. So it sounds like a self-help book, right? The whole title sounds like a self-help book, but it's actually one of the most profound books that I've read, and also very accessible. So the first half of the book is actually an argument against classical theism, but it's a special argument that I never really encountered before. It's not arguing that the classical theist God doesn't exist. Instead, it's arguing that eternal life is not something we want. So that's the argument. And if you guys are interested in the argument, you guys can read the book. And the second half of the book is basically a critique of capitalism that links to this critique of religion. And there, this writer, he gives a very interesting critique that eventually has to do with like the time that we have in our lives. And I won't spoil the book for you. So if you're interested in these things, read the book.
Fantastic. How do you discover this book?
So this book was actually written by the professor who taught me Heidegger at Yale.
Okay.
So he was kind of also advertising his book during
no wonder.
he was giving us readings from his book. And I was like, oh, this is quite interesting. So I went to read the whole book, and it's really quite a good book.
All right. Who's next? Yongtae, you're next.
Yeah. So I think I'll also recommend Gerald's book or a book like his sort, right? But I just want to add a comment before I recommend my type of book, right? So I think when I was looking through the short answer questions for the finals, actually there is a lot of students who think that for an argument to be a good argument, it has to be a valid argument. But it's not always the case that a valid argument is a good. It's not the case that only valid arguments are good arguments. Sometimes invalid arguments can be good arguments as well. And I just thought I want to put that on air. The book I want to recommend. Actually, this is very hard because I don't know what my students like. But in general, if I were to go with my gut feeling, I sense a sort of existential angst when I was looking through the group discussion summary, which I have been taking very seriously because I want to give them very detailed comments, and when I read through them, I can really sense this existential angst, right? So if you guys want an outlet, maybe you can read this book by BTS known as The Consolation of Philosophy, right? So it's basically a dialogue between a rich man, a very powerful man, and this lady known as philosophy, right? Lady Philosophy. So this rich man is actually sentenced to death. So he's going to die at the end. The whole dialogue, the whole book is written when he was in prison and he's going to be executed. And then I think the crux of the book, right, is about a lot of things. But for me, it's about whether philosophy can comfort a man who is going to die. right? And if philosophy cannot comfort a man who is going to die, then what can comfort a man? So that's a book that I recommend. But as a philo major, I'm also very fascinated about the topic on death. So you can, I don't watch movies, right? So if you want, you can search Death with Shelley Kagan, a very famous philosopher on YouTube. He asks a lot of questions about, whether we are just material objects, or whether relative physicalism is true, how to make sense of death. Is it rational to fear death, and how should we live right in the face of death? Yeah. But if you want something very light, then watch Criminal UK on Netflix. That's a very nice show. Yeah.
Very nice. Bernard, another round.
Oh, my recommendations, is it?
Yeah.
I don't have a lot. Like, most of my recommendations are articles that I've read in philosophy classes. So depends on the interest of the students. If you have a specific area of interest, you can email me and I'll probably have some readings.
What's the favorite journal article that you have read?
Whoa, I think it's difficult because there's just so many. And I don't think there are standouts, rather, as opposed to when I'm working on papers. Usually, you hope that you choose a topic that you're interested in. So kind of all these articles are really interesting while I'm working on the papers. But I'd say that one of my favorites would be Hilary Greaves' Cluelessness. So one of the objections against consequentialism, or Peter Singer's version at least, is that it's too demanding, right? So Hilary Greaves has this paper that defends subjective consequentialism. So yeah, if you're interested in consequentialism and the objections to that, then I think that Hilary Greaves' paper is very nice.
Gabriel, back to you.
Should I dare giving another recommendation on Chinese philosophy?
Sure.
I mean, it's another one that I chose for the exact same reason, Edward Slingerland, Trying Not to Try. I like fun books. I think it's okay to read fun stuff. And Slingerland is taking this concept, Wu-chieh, who is really central to ancient Chinese philosophy, and he's arguing that it is extremely relevant to us today, through, associating it to the idea of, flow, being in the zone, all this stuff. So you learn a lot about Chinese philosophy, but also about modern neuroscience and stuff like that. It's just a fun way of getting into it, I would say. And if you're interested in this version of the book, really interested in it, you can go and see the real deal, the academic version of it. He wrote a book called Effortless Action, The Paradox of Wu-chieh. And that's I would say, the more academic version of it. Yeah. But again, I recommend, because those are the examples of books who stand out to me because they really made me laugh. They were funny. So that's why I put them here.
Gerald, second round. Yeah.
Okay. So I thought, since I'm the only one who puts games on that list, I thought I should recommend a game because I'm the uncultured one. So there's this game called called The Outer Worlds, right? It's an open world RPG, very rich story, very nuanced characters. Even if you're not philosophy inclined, it's a very good game, right? Go and play it. But it draws upon a lot of philosophical themes like consciousness, like the philosophy of work, right? And of course, ethics, like interacting with fictional characters. But one of my favorite things about the game is that there's this storyline between two competing religions, right? And the two competing religions are based on, one of them is based on determinism, right? And it's called scientism, right? The other one is based on indeterminism, and it's called philosophism, right? So it's very bad naming because but right, it seems very interesting to me because it's it's giving us a look at how someone might live their life based on these sort of very scientific and philosophical kind of ideas, right? And turning it into a way of life, right? Which is very interesting to me.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to give some fiction recommendations. So if you have never heard of Neil Stephenson, Please go check him out. Neal Stevenson. He is well known to be one of those writers who will spend a couple of years to sort of get deep, to understand something, to know something, to do a lot of research on it. And then he write some big fat novels based on that, right? Just give you some examples. So he wrote a big fat book called Cryptonomicon, which is about code breaking, ciphers, cryptography, World War II, Enigma machine, and code breaking and all that. So Cryptonomicon. Then he was part of the sort of cyberpunk genre with Snow Crash and things like that. And then, but the two particular ones that has a lot of philosophy significance. One of them is it's called the Baroque Cycle. This is not just one big fat book; it's 3 big fat books set in the time of Newton and Leibniz and the whole gang. Right? Both Newton and Leibniz are walk-on characters in the fiction. It's slightly fantastical. There's a little bit of magic going on. But you have this long dialogue between Newton and Leibniz in the 3rd volume. Right. So if you want to see sort of early modern philosophy, this is the world of Descartes and people like that, and Newton and Leibniz. That's the Baroque Cycle. Another one he wrote is called, this is just one big fat book. It's called Anatheum. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's set in an alternate world, and this one is the fight between Platonic realism and nominalism. So again, he managed to write a big fat book full of action and people going to places and aliens and stuff, and it's actually about philosophy. So if you are in the mood to read big fat books, go check out Neal Stevenson. Rita, yeah.
Wow, I feel like all your recommendations are so interesting, and all the books I like are just super like boring, like academic books. I'm just that kind of person. So given my academic interest in philosophy and psychology, I feel like I should recommend a book in that domain, and the book I recommend is How the Mind Works by Steven Pinker. I think it's a very good introduction to the computational theory of the mind, which is, by the way, like what Bostrom uses for his argument eventually. And I think a lot of people end up studying psychology and not understanding the foundations of psychology. Everybody just goes to psychology and starts thinking of like mental representations, starts thinking about the brain as like a bunch of like functions that takes in representations and outputs other representations, but like doesn't understand why we talk about the mind in that way. And so I think Steven Pinker gives a very accessible. It's very accessible, but it's also very heavy. So like it's just not an easy theory. So he tries his best, but like some parts of the book are really you have to trudge through it. But like after you come out of the first 2 chapters, it's like great. And there are also chapters on, I think, evolutionary psychology, consciousness, and things after that. Once he gets you on board on the computational theory of the mind, then he has a lot of things to say about other things. And it's very interdisciplinary. Pinker himself is a linguist. He's a psycholinguist, and so there's linguistics, there's psychology, there's neuroscience, there's philosophy. Yeah, he just knows a lot and he writes very well. So I really love the book. And also I feel like I am a more history of philosophy student, so I feel like I should recommend some books from the history of philosophy. And for someone wanting a more fun but maybe a bit provocative read, I recommend some of Nietzsche's easier reads, maybe Zarathustra or
That's not easy.
It's a story, it's a story. It's like you can appreciate it on many levels, and like reading Zarathustra without knowing anything about Nietzsche is also an interesting experience, I think. And if not like one read that where Nietzsche writes a bit more like in an academic prose form is the Genealogy of Morals. So it's easier to grasp what his thesis statement and his explanations there, but he's still provocative and he's still funny. So I would recommend Nietzsche.
Yeah. Don't take. Oh, by the way, since we're talking about Steven Pinker, my favorite Pinker is still Blank Slate. What is it called? Yeah. Is it called the Blank Slate?
Yes, the Blank Slate.
Yeah, the Blank Slate. That's right. Yeah. I was reading it with some students here in the USP a couple of years ago, actually, as a reading group. And then in the middle of it, I was telling them, you got to take GET1029 to appreciate this argument about compatibilism right here. Yeah.
Interesting. I never read the blank slate, so I don't know that. I didn't know it's about compatibilism.
No.
but that's-
There's one little part of it where he talks about responsibility. Then, of course, if you have been sufficiently prepared by our topic, you will know. Okay, you know what's going on. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yontek. Yeah.
Yeah, Prof. So one more book you can consider is this book called "Does Center Exist?" Philosophical investigation by Eric Kaplan. I don't know if I pronounce his name correctly.
Yes.
But actually, this is this guy is actually very famous, and I did not know that he's so famous when I read the book as well. So actually, he's an Emmy Award comedy writer, right? For I think the sitcom The Big Bang Theory. Yeah. So this guy is actually very funny, and this book that he wrote is actually the first philosophy book that I read. So it's not the Toolkit by Julian Baggini, right? It's actually this book, and I think it was the humor that got me so interested in doing philosophy, right? So this book you can view it as an introduction to analytic philosophy. So he asks epistemological questions, ontological questions, and metaphysical questions, but always with a tinge of humor, and it's actually really, really fun, right? So to make a point against logic, right? So the author actually comes up with a very funny, valid argument. So now premise one, you have a dog, and your dog has puppies. So premise three, right? If A has B, and if B has C, then A has C. And the only animal that can have puppies is a dog, right? And you have puppies, right? So you are a dog. It's actually a very, very funny book. So the point actually of his thesis, right, is to rely on comedy, right, to resolve life very profound paradoxes. So it's a very good book if you want to just have a good laugh this Christmas. Yeah.
Okay, shall we move on to a different question? Right, so we have given a bunch of book recommendations. So when I put out this podcast, I'm going to also include a link to our shared document, right? And if you have a mind to go check out what we have, because it's a long list, please feel free to click the thing there. Let's move on to talk about how we have been doing for this module for the semester. It's been a difficult semester in many ways because this is the first time that we're offering this class completely online. Even the tutorials are synchronously online. And that's not been easy. And I know a lot of students found it a challenge because you came from a world in which classes are in person, you're in the same classroom, and now suddenly everything is online. I suspect that many of you are adapting better than you thought. You may not realize it, but actually many of you seem to be adapting quite well. But maybe I should ask my tutors. Let's go around to share a little bit of your best memory of teaching this semester, and then of course your worst memory of teaching this semester. Who wants to go first? Best memory first. Or you can do it the other way around too. Just one thing at a time. Yeah. Veda, you wanna go first? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So
Okay.
I'll start with the best memory. It's not just one moment. It's more like every week there'll be email correspondences or staying back after tutorials, answering questions from students. And there's one particular group of 4 students that always stay back. Not stay back. They always ask for consultations. So it's a weekly affair. So we meet every week for like an hour to discuss the topic that week. So that was like my favorite part of this module, engaging with the students, because their questions are really sophisticated, so much so that I've never thought about the things that they've asked before. So they really push me to think about the nuances of the arguments, the various arguments that we've been teaching, right? So part of me is like scared that I cannot answer that questions, but then but at the same time, once we talk through it together, then we realize that we just need to slow down and pause, and then it turns out that these questions are not that difficult after all. So that's my favorite thing about this semester. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Who wants to go next? Gabriel? Yeah.
Sure. It's actually a bit similar. It's something I appreciated that was possible through Zoom because not being in a classroom meant that we didn't have to leave right away. So it happens, especially, most often there was discussion after class, but I would say that the no cross and the single week, so especially in applied ethics, it happens that I just end the tutorials and nobody moves because they really wanted to discuss those issues. And I would say that that's just the moments I prefer during the semester, because this is when I could see the most genuine discussions that were going beyond just understanding the class content. It was really, I mean, Norcross and Singer, it seems that they really felt that the concepts were somehow close to their daily life. So that was probably my favorite part of the semester. But I mean, the rest was good as well. Just, yeah.
Yeah, so actually for me there was one specific kind of memory that kind of called out to me, and it includes one feature of Zoom. So yes, okay. So for my tutorials, usually at the end I will have this breakout discussion like within the small groups, and then there was one tutorial where I got this like the notification, right, because the breakout groups can call you. Let's say if you're out of a breakout discussion or you're in another breakout group, and then they'll call you over. And then I went there and then I asked them, okay, do you have any question? And then they say, no, we just miss you because your tutorials are so fun. And that was very touching, very sweet. Yes, thank you so much. You did take time away from the other group, but it was still very touching. Yeah, still felt good.
Fantastic. Hui-chieh? Yeah.
So mine is quite similar to Gabrielle's and Bernard's. Like a lot of my students stay back after class, and I think through the semester they realize they can stay for very long. So like towards the end they stay for longer and longer and longer and longer. Sometimes they stay until my next tutorial starts, and then I'm like, okay, I need to go. One thing I really appreciate is the quality of their skepticism, because a lot of my students, when they read like say Zhuangzi, they're like, okay, they really like tried to come out with like objections against Zhuangzi, and some of them came out with like very, very good objections. So I remember on the Zhuangzi week, I was thinking of objections about Zhuangzi, and then I clarified my objections with Prof. Lloyd, and then we worked out something, like we worked out like some sort of resolution. And I was actually very pleasantly surprised that in, I think, maybe 4 of my 5 tutorials, there were a group of students that came out with the same objections, and like then I was so glad that I went to consult Prof. Lloyd. No, I wouldn't be able to answer those questions. Like I was like, oh, thank you. Like wow, king. Then so I basically ran them through the same thought process, and it was just very I was just very glad to see how engaged, not just like sharp, but like also engaged, right? Like to come out with that kind of objection, you must read the reading, and then you must read it again, and then you must think hard about the reading and stuff like that. So like I really appreciated that for my students.
Yeah. Yongtae, you go first. I'll go last.
So for me, it was actually the last tutorial, and because the last tutorial, there's no specific content that we are required to cover, and actually we had some free reign to. Actually, I had some free reign to do what I wanted to talk about, and I talked about Bostrom-related topic about the ethics of migrating to some other planets, right? So the idea is, if we have to migrate to some other planets, then we have to take generations to arrive, right? So is it, in some sense, immoral to keep generations of children, lock their options on a spaceship, en route some other planet? And that was a Bostrom-related topic because it was quite futuristic. And I was hoping that the students, they will be interested in that, and the reception was quite positive. And actually, what I found most rewarding when talking about a topic that is not covered in the syllabus is that actually I can get to see these students apply the critical thinking skills that we teach them, or to make the distinctions they make, and to ask the question of whether the argument is a valid argument or not. Yeah. So actually, that was actually. I found it very rewarding because it kind of shows me that the stuff that I teach them is like not in vain. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, come on. We did pay you guys, okay? Make sure it's not in vain. Okay, so one of the difficulties when I teach this class, of course, is that even before the pandemic, is that because I did not want to do the tutorials, and there's a reason for that. I didn't want comparisons. I didn't want students to say, hey, how come you have Prof. Loy as a tutor? My tutor is someone else. I just didn't want that at all. I want to focus my energy on the lectures and the surrounding logistics, the quizzes, and all those things. But it does mean that I don't get a kind of in-depth engagement with the students most of the time, right? Now, pre-pandemic, one nice thing is that some students will actually stay back and talk to me after the lecture, and some of them will stay very long. And I was a little bit worried this semester whether or not, that would just basically evaporate. And it turns out that there is a group that always stays back and talk to me, right? There is a group of them, this is reminiscent of what Bernard and some of you were saying, that actually stays back and is often overlapping roughly the same group of people. So that's one highlight that, I will shout out to them, because they were so persistent that I decided to record one particular discussion we had as a podcast when we started talking about the ethics of birthday celebration. So I said, no, I have to record this. You guys are being recorded now. So that was that. Let me give you a second one that is maybe less expected, because the first one is a bit similar to what you guys were saying. One highlight of the moment, and in a sense, it's going to segue into one sort of, in a sense, worst moment as well. I asked you guys to, send me your favorite discussion summaries and all that. I do try to monitor those things even during the semester, but it's not been easy because there are just way too many students, right? So I do count upon my tutors to be able to make sure that the discussion summaries are done. When you guys show me your favorite discussion summaries, I was very, very happy. I was like, these are really, really high quality work. We're not talking about how sophisticated they are. Some of them are quite sophisticated, so I'm not concerned about that. I'm more impressed by the fact that you can see the palpable engagement that, whoever wrote this, you felt as if they were trying to crack something. They were like, no, we have to put in some effort in making sure that we are making sense, and we are either attacking this or defending this or what. And it could be that, or it could be, no, let's put in some effort to at least make it kind of funny and interesting to whoever is reading this, right? So I can see that kind of effort and that kind of engagement, and it's really a very nice rewarding moment for an instructor to know that this new thing that we just came out with out of the blue this semester, because we wanted to encourage students getting to know each other and working in groups together in a low stakes way, not overly pressurizing way, and it has some success. But that segues also into in a sense, the worst moment, because we also know that we haven't completely succeeded with that experiment. So what we have is maybe it's like a distribution. We have a significant number of groups who are in fact high performing, and in fact you can see that they are building bonds and they are discussing. I know one group that stays back and play games together, apparently, stuff like that. But there are also other groups that you can sense that they're just kind of sort of going through the motion, and not because they are bad students or anything. Maybe they have other priorities. So in a sense, the experiment hasn't quite fully settled in yet. The worst moment part comes in when you know that there must be at least some students that are not quite getting into it, partly not because they don't want to, but because they weren't in the right mix of students. Their peers, they don't have the same motivation. It makes it hard for everyone to coordinate. Some people are more serious, some are less. Some people want to put in more effort, some people want to put in less. That's a perennial problem that is very hard to solve. We try to solve it a little bit by trying to randomize people, right? But I don't think that the solution is complete yet. So that's something that has to be worked on for many years to come, I'm sure. Yeah. So that's kind of, in a sense, sort of like a worst moment, but in a way it's also just a reminder that nothing is perfect yet. There are many more things to improve going forward. Yeah. Since we're on this topic, worst moments. Who wants to go? Shall we go reverse order? Don't take worst moment.
But follow up from Prof. Loy's point first, right? Actually, I think I experienced what Prof. Loy mentioned as well. So I actually keep count of how many people participate in the group discussion summary when I was trying to grade it. But then I was actually also having an existential crisis, right? Thinking, wait, not everyone participates, so should I give them full marks? So I spent a lot of time thinking about that as well. Yeah. So and then I, after a discussion with Gerald and looking at the grading rubric, I decided to give, give marks even if not everyone participated, because sometimes it's not obvious whether you guys actually participated or not, because you guys did not state your name, right? But I realized something. from a particular group, right? So they're actually very smart, right? So not everyone participated, but they realized that what they require, what is needed of them is to just submit a assignment that make it look like everyone participated, right? So, so I don't know, maybe this is something you can pick up. I mean, we always, like when I was a student, I did not get group members that are always very motivated as well. But the stuff needs to be done. So sometimes, if you really want to do well, you can always put in the effort or go the extra mile. Yeah, and then for my worst moment actually is this, because during the last week of tutorial, actually decided to have like a mini picnic with everyone. So we have to bring like food and drinks to the Zoom class, right, where we are supposed to talk about the ethics of migrating to another planet or having some food and drinks, right? So I was eating what was that Pringles all the time, and I felt really dehydrated after, because I got like 6 tutorials a week. Yeah, so for the last meal option, it was a McChicken meal from because I told my mom to buy a McChicken meal for me, right? And then the class was so engrossed in the discussion that I only took one bite out of the McChicken, and then the McChicken was like dried up after the whole tutorial ended, which was about 1 hour and 30 minutes. Yeah. So that was the worst moment for me.
I want to clarify one thing. So we deliberately make the discussion summary kind of low stakes. So we didn't want to police all those things about who participated, and as far as possible, we try to keep it low stakes. Now we can, in principle, in future editions of this class, we can get better at it so that there's a more fine-grained way to do it. But not this semester. We are trying to experiment with new methods, right? So this particular component, as many of you will realize, is not highly differentiating at all. Right, so that's deliberate actually. Okay, Rachel, you wanna go next?
Oh, okay. I have not many bad moments over the semester, but I'll say like one moment where I realized like that I was a bit screwed was when I read the first discussion summary like ever, and then I realized there were 19 more to mark. So I was like, whoa. But initially, like when we conceptualized discussion summary, I was like, okay lah, low stakes, easy, just scan through and stuff like that. Then I realized that students were like super enthusiastic, and like the first few discussion summaries were like super long and like very sophisticated, very complex. So I read the first one, I was like, okay, no, there's 19 more. And then I think I went out on Saturday, and so I read it on Sunday, and I was supposed to return it like Sunday night. And I was confidently telling my classes, okay, you'll get it back Sunday night or something. And then then I was like, okay, no. And then after I learned that I need to spend most of my weekend on the discussion summary, to give like to actually like make sense of what they're saying, and like to give like good comments. Yeah, but the first time was just quite funny, I think.
If it's any consolation, during the same period, I was teaching a USB class where we had group discussion summaries, right, for 3 weeks in a row in the middle. There are 12 groups, and I was doing those. I was doing my own, as it were tutorials. These are seminars, right? Which is also why we wanted a word limit, right? We wanted to make sure that people are not like doubling down on this as if it's some kind of arms race or something. Yeah.
Yeah, after that, I just reminded all of them, okay, like I just gave them a word limit.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, you better do these words. And then they started to like finish their discussion summary. And then like if they got other things to say, they write additional reading for Rachel. And then they'll write the rest of the discussion summary.
Yeah, students are enterprising in a way. I know. Gerald.
Prof, they are also very vengeful, Yeah, so I was so after I come up with the quiz question 8, right, and I admitted that I create a very long quiz question 8, right, the student actually give me a very long group discussion summary in return and tell me this is
payback time. Oh my goodness. Yeah, Gerald, quick, yeah.
8 a.m. classes. Okay, I'm kidding. But it's something within the range of like something like Rita's in that because we're online, right? That's why like we have the Microsoft Teams, like it allows a bit more smooth like chatting, like you don't have to like write a whole email. So I think with that students get like they tend to write a bit more, as in like the frequency of questions gets a bit more when it's on Microsoft Teams rather than through emails, right? And then sometimes it keeps piling up, and I mean it's also like sort of on me, like my responsibility to like regulate it. But yeah, it was quite, like, at least to me it felt like quite a lot. Like some students like wrote quite a few questions, right? And they were very good questions, right? And yeah, I think like, yeah, I had like I felt the obligation, the moral duty to answer them, right? Even when it's like not during tutorials, not like when I'm trying to rest, but like I say, okay, I'll try to answer. Yeah, so it's mainly on me, but that was a sort of not so good moment for me.
Yeah, and like typing answers is like different from like telling answers to students. Like typing answers takes a while, and then the student will reply. Then it's like I'm telegramming the student. And then sometimes I like there was I think 1 or 2 times I just tell them, hey, you just guide me, you just zoom me now. I just tell you the answer now, okay? Like instead of me having to type everything.
If it's any consolation, because a lot of it is work from home, so I'm in front of my computer most of the time, most of the day, in fact, right? And for most of the student questions that come in, I would typically answer very quickly. Could be like within the following hour, could be within half an hour. Pragmatically, there's a reason for it as well, because I know that if I let it sit there, it's very likely that a whole bunch of other things are going to come in between, and I may even forget it, right? So I am practiced enough by now that I wouldn't say that all the questions are predictable. It's not quite like that. It's rather you taught this material long enough. You have been in the business for long enough for you to know how to sort of, give a quick answer and then see whether there's a need for a follow-up and all that. So, yeah, actually, on hindsight, it's probably a bad habit to answer too quickly. But, well, anyway, we keep our fingers crossed on that. That's kind of a tricky thing to balance, actually. We have at least one student who telegrams me. I won't name this person. I have at least one student who telegrams me at all hours of the evening too. But I won't mention who the person is. But I'm actually quite game on this because I'm probably killing myself like this by saying this, right? So as residential fellow in a residential college here, you might get a text at 1 a.m. in the morning. You might just have something, and we expect to we know that we're going to respond to it then. Because if someone texts you at 1 a.m. in the morning, you know that it's an emergency. You won't like say that, hey, text me tomorrow. No, I'm sorry. If it's something that needs to be attended to. So in a sense, I have a habit of, I'll just get it done as quickly as possible so I can move on to other things. Yeah, Bernard. Or you want Gabriel to go? Oh, Gabriel first? Yeah, Gabriel can go first. Yeah, that's right.
Sure. Just to follow up on what you were saying, I don't know if it's a bad habit, but as your student, I appreciate it. It's really, really convenient. No, so yeah, about worst moment, there was no bad moments really, but there was a lonely moment, and I blame it on Zoom, I feel that I failed my students on the principle of explosion. I really braced myself for that because I thought they are going to challenge the life of me on this. And, it's always this supposedly exciting moment when you introduce the principle of explosion. And it just, I planned for 5 good minutes in the tutorial to just be ready. And there was just a big silence in both my classes. So, yeah, nothing. I couldn't, so I don't know, I blame it on the fact that I didn't have a whiteboard, I don't know, but something went off.
It could be just shock and awe. It could be just that they were so flabbergasted they are not sure what to say.
I can see their face, I know it's not that. So yeah, that would be the only thing.
Yeah. Actually, how did the principal explosion thing go for the rest of you?
Prof, mine, they were quarreling about it all the time, and I realized maybe, right, you to get them to quarrel about it, right, you must ask them the question first. So now you just tell them, so is there anything that you know is obviously false that you want me to prove to be true? They will come up with funny things, right? Yeah, and then you show them how to prove that is true, they will confirm, they will fight.
Through a logical proof somehow, right? Yes. Yeah, you guys can go and Google.
I did ask them.
Yeah?
Yeah, sorry. No, I did ask them to come up with their own example of, contradiction and then, something they wanted to prove true. But they were just like, yeah, sure.
Well, you should go Google for what Bertrand Russell did with this. So he was facing a kind of a funny or hostile question from the floor, and then he did something with that. Yeah. Bernard, your turn. Yeah.
Yeah, so my original worst moment was something like the discussion summaries as well, because Monday 8 a.m. tutorials, right? So we have to read the discussion summaries and then pick out the misconceptions and then address it in the tutorial by Monday 8 a.m. So that was stressful, not necessarily worst moment. But then within the last week, I had like a new worst moment when a few of my students reached out after the finals because they were worried about not performing as well as they had expected for the finals, and that was so sad. And I guess it was the worst moment because I didn't know how to console them, other than to say that, well, don't worry, I got a B plus as well. It's not the end of the world. You can still do philosophy. Yeah, so that caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that, especially because a few of them were consistently the top few students, I'd say. So yeah, that hit me pretty hard. So,
I think that a lot of students underestimated how well they did in the module. I cannot say this for everyone, but typically in our module, and this is historical data, students think that they did worse than they actually did. It's one of the functions of having a rather hard-hitting series of quizzes, and our module is not a walkover, I'll just put it this way. It's not a cakewalk. So usually students will feel as if they did worse, and then it turns out that they actually did quite well. I'm not saying that the reverse cannot happen, but actually the proportions usually is, people think that they did worse than they actually did. Yeah. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for those students. Yeah. Anyway, all the marks are already in. I think that this cohort actually did pretty good overall. Yeah. Okay, so what's the next one that we are supposed to talk about? The last two? Word of advice for aspiring philosophy majors and any special word for your own tutorial students? Any last words for them? Well, not last words, but final greetings or whatever. Yeah. Who wants to go first? Word of advice for aspiring philosophy majors? You want to go first? Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know why you want to study philosophy. Just like how I don't know why I want to study philosophy. But I think the interest is very important. So because it's a 4-year, minimally a 3 to 4 year course, right? So you want to make sure that you are able to be interested in the kind of stuff that you are going to study. So you might want to go and read more serious stuff, right? And then not saying that the stuff that we are doing is not serious, but we did not. It's not. How do I put it? It's not focused enough. It's not to say it's not focused as well, but maybe it's not as detailed. A philosophical investigation that we could have done because we want to survey a lot of topics as well. But you want to look at one specific topic and look at it in depth, right? And then you see whether that kind of that kind of philosophical precision is something that you won't be bored of. I mean, if you find people making those kind of distinctions boring, right, then you might not want to punish yourself by majoring in philosophy, right? But if you still find yourself stubbornly wanting to major in philosophy, right? Why Yong-Tik can major in philosophy, why I cannot? If you think that, right, then okay, you then go ahead and major in philosophy, because you can still change your major if you decide against it. Just take more philosophy modules and explore, right? But when I majored in philosophy, I actually was thinking of doing a postgraduate degree in law, right? And philosophy degree can actually be helpful for that. And if you find out that you don't want to pursue law after completing your philosophy degree because you realize that there are more meaningful things to pursue, right? Then you have lost nothing, right?
Yeah, great answer. Rachel? Yeah.
Okay, so I'll give maybe one practical one, which is don't procrastinate on your essays. I really
Absolutely,
feel
man. Absolutely. Yeah.
I really feel very strongly for this because I think the essays are one of the key moments in a class where you learn everything. Like I could not learn a lot throughout the classes because I'm like, okay, everything's going over my head. I don't know what the hell's what's going on. And then when the essay comes, like I have to work things out myself and I have to go for consult and like stuff like that. And like that's when I really learn. And if I procrastinated, like which I do sometimes, then I just get nothing out of the module. You know, like I might not get a bad grade. I might just be able to smoke my way out. But like, yeah, I might not get much further. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
don't procrastinate your essays.
Yeah, so if you are majoring in philosophy, you do have to realize that past GET1029, most of the classes will be more essay intensive, right? So GET1029 is actually an anomaly. Well, it's not a complete anomaly because their logic is a bit like that too, but once you're past this, essay writing is going to be quite important. Yeah. Gerald, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to go back to a little bit about what Bernard said, right? So don't be discouraged by bad grades, right? Because like I mean, like even me, I got like A minus for like the intro mod, and I'm still doing philosophy. So
Flexing, this guy.
No, what? I didn't get A plus, right? Yeah, but
Yeah.
don't be discouraged
Okay,
by
Gerald.
bad grades. Don't be discouraged, all right? You can always improve, right? Philosophy is something that you can improve on, right? And just to share something about why, partly why I take philosophy is because I'm sorry, Prof. Lloyd, but I don't like to read. It sounds very paradoxical, right? Because yeah, it's philosophy. But the thing about philosophy is, we don't really read a lot, at least compared to other FASS modules, right? So we have basically a pretty short reading, right? But I think most of the work in philosophy comes from really understanding that reading and like really fleshing out the arguments behind that reading, which I like. To me, that's very good, and I think that's very interesting, right? So if you like that type of thing, right, then I think majoring in philosophy is good for you, or at least taking a minor is good as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing about our modules, not all of them are like that, but many of them tend to have a shorter reading list compared to certain other subjects in the humanities, especially. Not because we don't want you to read, but because we would much rather that you read a short piece of writing very, very carefully than to read a lot of things and then you don't really understand what's going on. Yeah. Gabriel, your turn.
Yeah, actually, my advice. I mean, it seems to go against what Gerald was saying, but actually, it's in the same direction. My advice to someone who wants to major in philosophy is to follow the example of this module and try to read as much. As much, depending on what you like, but as much raw philosophy as possible. Because it's very tempting and very interesting as well sometimes to read books about books, especially if you, I don't know, you want to read Plato, you want to read Aristotle. At first, you're going to get confused, but it's a skill, and the more you do it, the better it goes. So I would advise you to train on that, on really,
Yeah.
I don't know if you,
Yeah, that's right. Go to the primaries and read them carefully.
Go to the primary source, and I know it can be challenging, especially if you're targeting another language, for instance, but the practice makes it really better, for sure. So, yeah.
The thing about reading is this. I strongly encourage people to read widely, but pragmatically speaking, it's not absolutely necessary to do well in typical philosophy classes. Right, it's not about how much you read, it's really about how carefully you have read and thought through things, right? So if I encourage people to read, it's because it's a wider concern. It's not just about doing well in philosophy. It's like, don't you just want to know what's happening in the world? Don't you want to just fill in the rest of your general knowledge about the world, right? So it's more in that kind of a context, actually, more than doing well in philosophy specifically, so to speak. Yeah. Bernard.
Yeah, so my advice goes in line with what Gabriel and Prof. Lloyd just said. So Prof. Lloyd did mention that in philosophy, it's not necessary for you to read beyond the assigned text, for example, for you to do well. But I would say that my best essays are ones in which I did go beyond, and then also, of course, make sure that you understand the secondary sources correctly as well. You interpret them, you use them effectively in your essays. So I'd say that make sure to learn how to use the library resources. It's very important. I would say go to the library, but in this climate, I'm not sure if you can visit the NUS library. So online resources, very important. And like what Hui-chieh said, you need to start writing your essays early. So I'd say at least a month for like a 2,000 word essay is what I give myself usually, because no first drafts of essays are good essays. So the game is really in editing. Yeah, so start early is the best advice I can give.
Yeah. All right, final round ready. Oh, actually, I should say something as well, right? So my advice to aspiring philosophy majors, a little bit of what everyone has been saying, just like Yongtek, you really need to make sure that you want to do this. This is not an obvious path. Okay, I'm not one of those people that say, oh, everybody should major in this. No. I'm not one of those people like that. In general, no matter which major you want to major in, it doesn't have to be philosophy. It could be something else instead. Make sure that you are actually interested in it, because it needs to sustain you for several years. And beyond that, after you graduate, you need to feel good about it, such that, you thought that was a enriching and valuable experience that you had those years, right? You have one, especially if you're a Singaporean, you have one shot at getting subsidized education. After that, you got to pay full freight. Okay? So make sure you choose wisely. Choose something that you actually want to do. Right? Not because other people tell you to do it. Not because, you think that it's going to be fun now, but you think about it, next year is probably not fun, or whatever it is. Make sure you actually want to do it. Right? And you're willing to, suffer the punishment for it. And I want to emphasize the second point. Maybe that will be my advice. The Kung Fu metaphor that I cheekily use to describe what we're trying to do in this module, that's kind of serious, actually. Philosophy is not a bunch of content for you to sort of memorize or know, or even to just to understand. Ultimately, it needs to be something like a set of skills that's settled in your soul, whether you like it or not. If you want to be able to do this, you got to be able to do it. No one's going to pay you to be, the ringside critic here. Okay? And you're not here just to watch the people fight anymore. If you want to do this, you actually have to be able to go in and spar with your own muscles, with your own wits. Okay, so that does mean that the training is pretty serious, actually, when you think about it, right? You have to get serious about the pain that comes with it. It's not easy. Yeah. My first essay I wrote as a year one student, back in those days where we still wrote essays. It's a very different kind of world and very different kind of module arrangement. I was a C+, by the way, in case. I think I mentioned this in some other context before. I still managed to get a pretty good grade for that module as a whole, but that's a different story. But that first essay was a C+, because I was too complacent. I have no idea that this is what it takes. Okay, and you had to suffer for that. You had to sort of learn how to do this through repeated experience, and there will be many points of failures and many points of places where you have to discover that you weren't actually doing as well as you thought you could. But that's just a chance for you to get better, for you to pick up yourself and get better. Okay. All right. Parting words for your students. Yontek, you want to go first?
Okay, so I really appreciate all of you for all your participation, and I really apologize if I make any errors in my teaching that you subsequently realize. You can always come to me and clarify if you think I make a mistake, and if I really make a mistake, I'm very sorry for that. I hope that the methods of philosophical investigation, the critical thinking tools that we have been equipped with for this module, they'll leave an impression on you, right? And guide the way you think, not just in philosophy, but in the way you live your life, right? So I don't know how much of the topics that we have gone through, have actually interested you, but I think there is actually one question that you guys should think about, right? Which is what it means to live a good life, right? So and also I will be tutoring GET1028 logic next semester. So if you want more punishment, I'm always here. Yeah, but if you just miss me, right, you can just telegram me. Don't have to take the module, right?
Risa, yeah.
So just thanks for pestering me with all your questions. There are some like all your questions, your queries, your thoughts, and I hope you keep on pestering all your future tutors and professors with those good questions. Keep up the enthusiasm.
Fantastic. Yeah. Gerald?
Yeah, I mean, like, thanks for everything, right? I hope you had fun learning in the tutorials as much as I had fun, well, teaching the tutorials, right? I hope use these questioning skills, apply it back to your other disciplines and whatnot, right? And of course, if you're doing philosophy, and it's great, right? Apply it there as well. And yeah, I'm also sorry if I screwed up anything, especially for 8 a.m. classes. Like sometimes I would like blank out like randomly, and I like pause for a minute. Yeah, I'm sorry for that, right? I usually do better when writing. Yeah.
Yeah. Gabriel?
Yeah, but just want to say a genuine thanks for the students who have been cruising through this difficult semester, and they have actually made my life very easy by being model students. And I will say a special thanks to a few of them who recognize themselves. They are the ones who have been really given life to the tutorial by being very chatty, and it was really a pleasure, really.
Yeah, fantastic. Bernard, yeah.
Yeah, so I already missed everyone. So I woke up on reading week, right? So 8 a.m. on a Monday. And I woke up just like out of habit. And then I got really sad that there's no more tutorials. So that was kind of a bummer. So I miss everyone. And if you ever need advice about philosophy or just your undergraduate career, you can always reach out to me via email. Yeah.
Yeah, actually that reminds me, if you want to get in touch with the philosophy interest group, the one easy way is just to email, especially one of the tutors who graduated from the department. Yongtaek and Bernard and Gerald are the most obvious ones, right? Their emails are all in Luminous, so you can find them and email them, right? You guys can easily connect them with the philosophy interest group, for instance, right? You guys are still in touch with them, right? Yeah. We can also go and find the links for those people as well. So, this is actually a pretty good semester by historical standards. In the following way, I think that you guys, the students, you are as good as the others have taught, at least as good. Okay, and by some measures, you guys actually went are a little bit over the top in terms of your enthusiasm. I won't say that you like straightforwardly outshone your seniors or anything. No, it's not, because I'm still in touch with those people, so I need to make sure that I take care of their feelings too. Right? No, but you guys are right there as well. You guys do not lose to your seniors at all in terms of enthusiasm, in terms of ability, in terms of just being able to just do this carefully, and so on and so forth. Now, if you look at the quiz scores, some of you would, you may have heard from the seniors that the average score was a little bit higher compared to your cohort. But guess what? Do you know why that is the case? Because we introduced MRQs for the first time this semester, right? So if you don't take that into account, you did at least as well as your seniors, and that's just one way to sort of think in terms of measurement. So don't feel bad about yourself. You guys did really well. Philosophy is a hard subject, right? That is to say that doing philosophy is not like just consuming popular philosophy. It's not just listening to people. If you want to do it yourself, it's not usually that easy, right? And I don't mean like having profound thoughts. I mean like thinking carefully. Thinking carefully is one of the harder things to do in life, actually, because our basic, psychology and instincts tend to cut against it. Why should we think carefully most of the time? Most of the time, we don't need to think carefully, right? It burns energy in our brains to think carefully. So there you have it, right? So don't ever feel bad about yourself. You guys did well. Second thing, despite the fact that this is an online semester, I must say that you guys really made use of all the tools at your disposal to talk to your tutors, to do your work, and I'm really proud of you for doing that. I think that you will go far, right? I hope and pray that the pandemic will go away so that we can have more and more in-person classes, because there is an aspect of that social experience of education that is not easily captured by having even synchronous classes on Zoom. We all understand that, right? But you're living in a pandemic, so sometimes other priorities do come in, okay? And we try our best. I also want to give a big shout out to all my tutors. You guys did really well this semester. This has been a good year, actually. Okay. All right. So, as a befitting, like one of those movies where at the end there will be like sort of bloopers and what happened to all these different characters, right? Oh, he got married or whatever. One sentence on each of you. What's happening to you guys? What's happening next? Yeah. Yongtae, you go first. Yeah.
Prof, I'm just catching up on sleep. So I've been sleeping 10 hours a day.
Fantastic. Yeah. Risa?
Nothing. Reading is about how to do nothing, and it's really nothing happening.
Nice.
Nothing.
The philosophy of nothing is a pretty serious stuff. Gerald, yeah.
I'm rolling the graduate school dice.
Yeah. All the best. I know you're applying. Yeah. Gabriel?
Well, tonight I will be finishing the Queen's Gambit.
Aren't you supposed to say that you're working on your thesis? Okay, it's okay.
It's important to take a break. It's important to take a break.
Just kidding. Yeah. Bernard?
Yeah. So my MOE job starts in 2 weeks, so I'm trying to prepare myself for that.
Yeah. I won't be teaching GET1029 in the coming semester. Most of you already know that. It's actually very, very likely that I will take a break from teaching GET1029 for at least a year, even after that. So for academic year 21-22, it's very, very likely that I will not teach GET1029 because I'm being deployed to create something for the newly launched College of Humanities and Sciences. So those of you who don't know what that is, you have not been paying attention to the news. It doesn't affect you, for those of you who are current students, but it affects all the incoming students for next year. And I'm going to be one of those people who is going to be offering one of these brand new classes that's being created for that purpose. So that may take out a year's worth of time for me away from a GET1029. I will always miss it because this is actually one of my favorite classes to teach. I taught many classes in the past, but once I started doing philosophy exposure from about 2016, I realized that this is actually one of my favorites all times. Right? This is not to say that I don't enjoy the other classes. In fact, I kind of miss many of the other classes I used to teach. Some of you took Plato with me or Chinese philosophy and stuff like that. So I do miss teaching that. But the scale of impact of this particular class is something that I really aspire to. I want to be able to create something that can bring value to a lot of students at the same time. Right? And that to some degree, I think that we are having some success. And I think that we can continue to do this right in the department. All right, so that's all we had to say today. If you are still with us, all the best to you. Okay. I'll tell you something about Eric
About
Kaplan.
doing that.
He gave my commencement talk. When I received my PhD, he was the commencement speaker. He was fantastic. I actually have a recording of that, most of that speech. It's on my YouTube channel. I'll put it up. I'll make it available as part of this special deal here. He is very funny. And he's also someone, he was actually from that generation. He was doing his PhD. He didn't actually finish. Then he landed a nice job in Hollywood, so he left.
Should we tell them who created Tess?
Okay, so I can at least admit to creating the version that is in the final exams because I did set the final exams. Okay, but the one for the quizzes, for the weeklies, that's a different story. So whoever wants to own up, better own up now.
Should we point it out?
Go
All
ahead.
at the same time?
I do. To be honest about it, I didn't keep track because now obviously all the different drafts were named. So if I really wanted to do it, I can go and find out. But I didn't bother to. Okay, so technically I still don't know.
Okay, I say we could just point it out. Shall we?
Go ahead. But you appear in different. You appear in different slots. In your own.
Oh no!
Yeah,
Okay, be fair.
Yeah.
Someone just said it.
So who is it? Come on.
Okay, so to give you guys a hint, right? So once I was creating a quiz question and I was not very inspired, and then I asked Gerald for help for Japanese seasoning on the question. Yeah, right. To tackle some Japanese seasoning on the question. Gerald is my go-to for this kind of stuff. So you guys should know who.
So wait, are you saying that you are the one, or are you accusing Gerald of being the one?
I'm hinting that Gerald is the one.
Are you drawing attention away from yourself?
Yes.
Bernard and Rachel are saying nothing to do with me. Nothing.
I think we should all leave that with
No comment.
Gabriel's finger pointing there. And then figure out how does Discord work.
Yeah, they can play probabilities and just.
Yeah.